Welcome to the Defense and Aerospace Report. I'm Vago Muradian at the Reagan Library in Simi Valley, California, where we're covering the 2016 Reagan National Defense Forum. Our coverage here is sponsored by Raytheon, and we're honored to talk to Caret, who is the President and CEO of Boeing Defense, Space, and Security. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you, Vago.
I want to start off by asking you, you're the senior most executive in the world's number 2 defense company. In terms, there's a new team, there was a surprise outcome to the election. From your standpoint, what is some of the advice that you're feeding to the Trump team in terms of to try to help them think through what the defense-industrial relationship should be at the Pentagon?
Well, we are very focused on making sure that they have current information and accurate information about the programs. Also, policies that are working, and if there's opportunities for us to have some say in some legislation that we think could be improved, we'll definitely provide that. But I think with any administration changeover, it is all about listening to the constituents, and the transition team seems to be doing just that. They're spending a lot of time with all of us in industry, understanding what's working and what's not, and looking towards the future. It's a very exciting time.
I want to take you to the question of strategy. The Obama administration, very much because of pressures in the Budget Control Act, was pushing a very reform-minded agenda. The Trump team is coming in much more for a rebuild, or let's just buy more stuff. And it remains to be seen the extent which that they're going to be applying reform principles to it. From the standpoint of strategy, how does this change potentially your strategy between one that's more reform-minded to one that's sort of more stuff-oriented?
I don't know that it actually changes our strategy. Even if there is increased opportunity for acquisition of products or services, there's still going to be a need to have that financial, I would say, assurance or integrity. And so we're going to continue to deploy in a method that provides more for less. We're going to continue our affordability efforts. We're going to continue to look for ways that we can bundle and provide long-term value for our customer. Most important to me, Vago, is I want to make sure that the products and services that we're building and we're providing meet the customer's needs.
Where do you, you've put a big focus on winning. Your predecessor, who served valiantly in the company for a long time, left after the bomber decision, which came as a surprise when your team with Lockheed lost to Northrop, who was the incumbent on the bomber programs. Although some would argue that Boeing is really the incumbent, given the B-1 and the B-52 are Boeing products. But tell me a little bit about what you're doing both internally and externally to increase that win rate, especially after some of these big decisions haven't gone Boeing's way ultimately, and that you're trying to make sure that you're getting into that next generation of programs.
Well, there's really 3 focus areas for me. First is making certain that we continue to innovate. And innovate is not just about the latest product or technology. It is about innovating our business models. It's about innovating our rate structures. It's about innovating how we contract for business. The second is on performance and productivity, making certain that we are truly being the most efficient and the most productive, that we're optimizing our business, that we're making certain that we're providing that right value in the right context, and that we're providing synergy. And then finally, it's about the best team and talent. I am so blessed to have an amazing workforce of more than 48,000 folks who are dedicated to serving our customers' mission and making certain I'm listening to them and what they need to allow us to be the most flexible, agile, and lean forwarding that we can.
The other part of your company is Boeing Commercial Aircraft, where they build aircraft on a scale that sometimes military people forget is absolutely massive, right? We were just talking before the interview, and we're going to be heading up to Renton and to Everett and to Seattle to see those production lines. But if you look at the 737, you're at 42 a month, going to 47, going to 52. Are there any lessons that you can take and apply from the BCA side of the business over into the defense side of the business, whether it's for profitability, producibility, and just be able to deliver better for the customer?
Well, the answer is yes, and we actually have been doing that for a number of years. You remember you've been to our Chinook facility before, and I shared with you we brought in the 737 team as we were increasing rate on the Chinook line. We actually had them help us look at how we go about doing that. We've also helped them as they've looked at improvements on 787 in terms of some of our efficiencies and productivity improvements. It is truly a one enterprise effort. And Ray Connor, as he's stepping away and Kevin McAllister's coming in, we are joined at the hip to make certain that not only do we build upon that great foundation we already have, but that we continue to leverage these advantages. No other company in the world has this opportunity but the Boeing company, and we want to make certain we take full advantage of it.
One of the partnerships that you've struck is with Saab over the TX trainer program. How important is that? It used to be a must-win. Now you're defining it as a can-win program. How important is that program, and how important is the partnership with Saab, and does it really extend beyond the TX program?
Well, I'm glad you brought up TX. It is very much a focus of mine. And the reason I call it a can-win is because I want to make certain that we don't define Boeing Defense's future by any one single program. And when we use the word must-win, it somewhat does that. From a team perspective, I'm looking forward to that airplane flying as good as she looks. And as you know, we rolled her out earlier this year, and she looks really good. The partnership with Saab has been long-standing. We also do business with them on the commercial side of the business, so it will continue to evolve over time. They are great partners. They have been with us every step of the way, and I look forward to the U.S. Air Force getting a chance to really evaluate her from a competition standpoint.
Speaking about wins, what are some of the other programs that you're targeting or making a priority to make sure that you guys bring those home?
Well, I think you're well aware, JSTARS, I believe, is fundamental to achieving that leadership position in outfitting commercial aircraft for military purposes. I believe we have a long-standing history there. It is our ability to take the best of what Boeing Commercial has and Boeing Defense and bring it together for the warfighter. Also, MQ-25, as we look to the future, that's going to be, I think, a very important program. It's been discussed for several years now, and I think the investments from across industry are going to result ultimately in what the Navy is looking for. And then the ground-based strategic defense program, when we look at the nuclear triad and the recapitalization of that, well, I do believe that's going to require a national discussion to make sure everybody's aligned on how the triad as a whole is funded. I do believe at some point there is going to be modernization efforts there, and we very much want to be part of that.
Do you, part of the strategy, though, the company for a long time has been, and you guys have historically turned commercial aircraft into very successful military products. But if folks look at, for example, some of the challenges that have existed, for example, on the 737 to the wedge tail, there were challenges associated with it. On the KC-46 tanker program, there have been challenges. What do you tell folks who are critics and say, wow, they used to be really good at it, and they've had some hiccups? Whether it's for any of these programs, and also KC-46, do you think that you guys have cracked the code on it and you're out of the woods?
Well, relative to any development program of any, aerospace, especially defense aerospace, it is a complex business. We are building aircraft that are going to be in service many times for 50 years plus, and there is a lot of robustness and redundancy that needs to be incorporated into those. We have had challenges on some of the programs similar to our other industrial peers. I do believe the formation of our development organization that occurred under Chris Chadwick has been formative in putting a foundation in place for executing with rigor continually, time and time again, on New Start programs. With KC-46 specifically, we've just crossed the 50% mark on flight test, but again, it's a development program. It requires daily management, and we're going to continue to have that focus and finish mindset till we deliver those aircraft.
Do you think that you have all the risks and everything bounded at this point, and that it's your path is clearer, that's not going to include big charges in the future?
Again, I'm going to just say, Vago, we manage this daily, and I think it's important for our team we need to operate and execute that flight test program to make certain that we've identified any issues. We have been fortunate to date. Nothing has manifested itself that has caused any additional issues, but we're going to continue to manage it daily, and I'll just leave it at that.
Let me take you to the fighter lines. Every time folks think that Boeing's fighter lines are going to be over, Boeing's fighter lines appear to be. So give us kind of a little bit of a snapshot on where that business stands right now, because if you look at the 18, you look at the 15, you guys have some work in the pipeline.
Yeah, I made a lot of news earlier this year when I shared that I'm very focused on extending our fighter lines with modernization and upgrade, coupled with our production quantities. And it's very much the Chinook model we put in place, where that production line started back in the 1960s and it's still thriving today. I'm very thankful to the U.S. government for advocating for us on those most recent sales to Kuwait and Qatar. And I'm also thankful to the Canadian government that they had the ability and the willingness to value our F-18 aircraft and deem it as a suitable part of their fleet. These lines are going to extend well into the mid-2020s, and I believe with certainty it will go beyond that.
Let me ask you one question on C-17. I was talking to Senator Jim Talent. We were discussing, some of the capabilities, what should be priorities, and he raised the issue of C-17s. He said, look, it's a great aircraft, but he said any future we go into, especially if we're going to expand the force and we're looking at some of the global challenges we're looking at, it might be worth considering restarting that line. What would the challenges be in doing that from your perspective at this point?
Well, we would love to have the conversation. Nobody's mentioned it to me.
You've quietly launched a ventures company. All of the big primes have launched venture companies in Silicon Valley to act as that conduit and part of the Defense Innovation Initiative and the outreach to Silicon Valley that Dr. Carter started. That unit now is in St. Louis, if I'm correct. Tell us what you guys are trying to achieve with that. What are the kinds of technologies you're targeting that you want to bring into the Boeing company?
I think most people would be surprised that we actually launched that company more than 2 years ago. And it has really been an innovation hub for us where we look at those types of business opportunities that don't fit within our traditional mainstream. One of the things that we have learned, as others have, is that you need the ability to fail quickly and move on. And this team of people are very specialized, and they are actually out in front of the rest of us looking at the future and looking at some new business opportunities that may not have been as traditional as some of what we thought in the past. I'm very excited about what DIUX is doing. I'm actually looking forward to conversations with them where we have opportunities to partner together. Innovation is key to all of our future. The defense and aerospace industry is one of the greatest innovators of all time, and we are going to be that well into the future. I also think, though, innovation involves more than just technology innovation. I'm a big believer in business models, and how we operate our business has lots of opportunities ripe for innovation. And so using these folks to look at several aspects of the business has been very beneficial to us.
What about the culture change? What are some of the culture change? Your predecessor started this process about saying, look, we have a terrific company with terrific people and terrific capabilities, but we can be a little bit plodding sometimes. What are some of the things that you're doing in order to get people out of their shells, get people out of their older sort of box thinking and get them to think more freely to be able to be more successful over the long term?
Well, it starts with one really simple practice, which is listening to our folks. And I have made it a personal agenda that there is line accessibility from everybody to me and to my leadership team. We have increased the amount of communications. We have provided clarity about where we want to take the business, and we're really focused on eliminating bureaucracy. I want folks to know that they have the authority to make the decisions, and let's move forward with it.
Let me ask you one final question. The department was in a very lengthy series of negotiations with Lockheed Martin on the F-35. I'm not going to ask you to comment specifically on whatever the discussion was between the customer and the company, but the Pentagon took a step that was unusual for some when it just said, negotiations are over, this is the amount of money we're going to pay you. As a chief executive of a defense business, did that send you any signal, and what signal did it send you? What did you think when you saw that?
I'm not going to comment specifically on that situation because, I don't have any insight. What I do know is that negotiations can always be tough, especially when we're talking about some of these very complex programs that span long ranges of time. I have plenty in my portfolio that sometimes involve tough conversations and tough decisions. And so I think it's having a spirit of insight and transparency with our customer. That's most important to me so that we can arrive at a win-win.
Last question, I lied. Let me ask you about helicopters, because that's, I remember that great day on the Chinook line. Tell us a little bit about helicopters. I mean, this has been a very challenging period for the helicopter industry in certain respects. Obviously, yes, on the Chinook it's been going well. It's been going gangbusters, obviously, for Sikorsky. But if you look at it, there's a rather sizable gap, and then sort of a winner-take-all, big bang kind of program at the very end of this. What are some of the challenges associated with keeping capabilities, keeping teams, making investments when you're really not sure whether or not you're ultimately going to succeed in a program that's that far away?
I think it's a two-pronged approach. We need to always be looking to the future, but we also need to be looking out what are those capabilities to keep these aircraft and these services relevant for today and tomorrow's fight. And so it's really making certain that we are able to do both, and we have teams that are focused on executing today's work statement and challenges, as well as having folks who are visionary. And I have a firm, we have great partnerships with our customers, and so it's having those roadmaps that allow off-ramps and decisions to be made that will ultimately allow them to have the products that they need for the fight.
Leanne, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Vago.